What the hell?
What's up, skibbity heads? Now, this may come as a giant shock to the audience, but ladies and gentlemen, I do not care about politics. I know I'm so cool, right? I'm so cool because instead of spending time thinking about things that matter, I would rather spend my time thinking about Breaking Benjamin and Diet Coke and YouTube drama. Overall, just being a man-child. W-Riz, my good friend, this method of thinking is truly goated with the sauce. And as a result of not really caring, this whole Israel-Palestine thing has really passed me by. I barely even know what's going on. I see people screaming at each other all day over it, getting all worked up. I see Destiny screaming about it, getting maulding. I see Vegan Gains mad. I see Hassan Piker mad. And you know what? Fair enough. If you're passionate, if you hate Israel, if you hate Palestine, if you hate the media's coverage of this, that's your prerogative. Whoever you think is justified, you know what, man? Whatever. Good for you. You're all invited to the cookout, okay? But for me personally, I don't care, and you cannot make me. I have no stake.
Then Tom, why are you talking about it so much during this video? I mean, you say you don't care, but clearly you do care.
Well, that's the thing. I care about important world events when they're relevant to YouTubers. And in this case, those YouTubers are Ethan Klein from H3H3 and Hassan Piker of Hassan Piker Productions. Hassan Abi. You guys know who I'm talking about. Ethan Klein was really on his pro-leftism mark a few years ago after realizing that, I guess, there were some right-wing people in his audience that he really did not like. Meanwhile, Hassan is the biggest political streamer in the world. In terms of a business transaction, it made sense for them to do something together. So with Frenemies, which was the show with Ethan and Trisha Paytas on its way out, it was time for a new show, a new collaborative podcast. That show would end up being Leftovers, starring Ethan Klein and Hassan Piker. The first episode of this show released in September of 2021, and it's got 2 million views. And Ethan's stated goal was to have a comedy-based show about politics dedicated to clowning on idiotic people. I assume mostly idiotic right-wingers. In the first episode, they talk about how they think they have good chemistry, they get along well, and Ethan says he's a big fan of Hassan's live streams.
You don't want me to talk about politics, so I went and made a whole show about it. But the spirit of this show is not serious policy debate. It is bringing righteous justice to these bags. That's it.
Okay.
Just clowning on idiots.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I mean, that's what I do regularly. So when you hit me up, I mean, when we did that original podcast, your podcast, I was like, is this a thing? Like, are we vibing right now?
Right.
Right off the bat, there were a lot of people on this podcast for even existing. You know, more right-wing people had a problem with it, or maybe former fans of Ethan who didn't like the direction he was going. But outside of that, Ethan's core audience saw it very favorably. If you check the comments on episode 1, a lot of people are super excited for this show to go down. I mean, we already know this is a match made in heaven when Ethan pauses the first segment 20 seconds in. Honestly, really hyped for this show. There's some chemistry there, and Ethan seems to have a calm or rationalizing effect on Hassan, while Hassan has an educational / humbling effect on Ethan to a degree. I'm fucking obsessed with this combination. If Trish had to spiral for Hassan to join, then go off, queen. The world is better for it. I really like this new format. I'm so excited for Ethan that he can collab with someone respectful, smart, reasonable, who seems like a nice person. Also, it's such a complete joy to have Bussy explain to Ethan.
Oh, that's like the sanctioned word?
Bussy is like a meme.
Oh, okay.
You haven't seen the memes about like putting ussy behind everything?
Like, give me another example.
Cussy, car pussy. Like from the cinematic universe of Cars.
And is that in a car or a car?
No, that's the Cars from the Cars Pixar cinematic universe.
Where you can f them?
No, they f one another. Because like there's car babies and there's like male cars, female cars.
I guess I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Don't worry, I got
in the tailpipe.
This is why
here we have the anatomy of the cussy.
That's a real. That's right.
The anatomy of this doesn't make sense.
This is important stuff that we're looking into now.
And to date, this show has released 60 episodes, all of them around 2 hours long, if not more. And to this day, the views are very strong, still getting well over 1 million views per episode, pretty much without fail. It's no secret why this show succeeds. It appeals to the political ideals that are already broadly supported by Ethan's audience, and obviously Hassan's. It features 2 of the bigger names in the content creation sphere, and instead of focusing on super serious policy decisions, the goal of the show is to keep it light. But things have been anything but light in the last few episodes. Now, this started with a few conversations on the show around socialism versus social democracy, and it became clear that Hassan is just much farther left than Ethan. He really is. Maybe in a way that Ethan himself did not quite realize until these conversations went down live on the air.
And there are people like yourself out there who are, as far as I understand, pretty good bosses, right? But that is never going to be that's never going to be the constant. That's never going to be the case.
But in social democracy, you set up the bumpers, you set up the systems where they have to do that. Well, that's the bare minimum they have to do.
Well, and then we go back to the erosion of the amenities that
I don't
the state
feel like that's a
offers and the
strong enough
regulation.
argument to say socialism's better.
No, as long as there is some kind of capitalist compensation in any sort of sector, they will always choose to monopolize.
But you're talking like it's a guaranteed. And again, I go back.
It has been a guarantee every single time.
And it's been a guarantee by the same metric that any socialist country devolves into disaster. I mean, it's not fair to put that out there like it's just given. Because on the other flip coin, you can say, this, like I mentioned, socialism. There's going to be people moving towards capitalism.
So socialist nation states,
it's too hypothetical.
Socialist nation states, however, historically, most of them at least, have not eroded or been destroyed due to like people who are just like, I want to be capitalist. Usually those people are being goaded or supported, facilitated by a much more powerful nation that is using the inherent greed to their advantage to cause divisions. But the real material issues in socialist nation states, historical socialism, real socialism in the real world that has happened, has always been due to mishaps, famine, or the government exercising too much authoritarian control.
Yeah, you could say the same thing.
These sorts of things.
Now, this debate on the air was pretty civil, and I would say there wasn't a ton of animosity in the air, but even on the podcast, it became clear that Ethan's staff and Hassan are farther left than him. Something that maybe he knew but had not really confronted until this point, but he was really grappling with it in a very real way on these shows.
But here, does this make sense?
Yeah.
You're inside of, and I want to ask you, Dan, because I'm curious about your opinion. You're inside a big company. Let's just say they make cars. There's tons of employees there. The CEO, founder, he makes a lot more than the employees. Do you think that the leaders should make more than the workers, Dan?
Well, it just kind of depends on. I mean, I think there's nuance there because I think it really depends on what the company looks like, how it operates. Should the CEO, who is on a day-to-day basis working and managing a company, make more money?
He works the same hours as the production people.
I mean, with more responsibility, I think should inherently come with some more privilege. However, I mean, now, are we talking about a CEO or are we talking about an owner? Because a lot of owners don't do shit.
No, I'm talking about someone who's working, because the idea of ownership is probably different in a socialist.
Right, and the owners may be private or even maybe a public company.
The CEO. So you agree he should make more? So
it just depends.
There's not room for nuance. There's just not.
What do you mean?
If you're living in a socialist country, this needs to be like laid out. Like, there's not room for nuance, in every workplace, we're going to decide different rules for everything.
Now, everyone here is still friends. Seemingly, it's all fine. But then the audience, specifically Hassan's, starts to get really mad. They thought Ethan was a full-on socialist or even a communist. He's only a social democrat? What's going on here? He doesn't 100% agree with Hassan? And around the same time, we start seeing posts like this from Ethan. Please do not take these political conversations personally. Being called a class traitor 1,000 times because I'm only a social democrat and not a full socialist makes me not want to have combos like this anymore, which is probably the least productive outcome. The audience is mad at him because he's not far left enough. Certainly not all of them, but some of them were mad. Those who had come there from Hassan's chat who wanted to hear their thoughts repeated back to them by their favorite internet personality were having a very hard time. This came to a head most recently with the Israel-Palestine conflict. They would do a 4-hour episode of Leftovers 2 weeks ago, and in this episode, both of them would end up crying.
Sorry, this is really f***ed up. They went to her funeral and beat the shit out of people and ripped the Palestinian flag off of her. Palestinians can't have a moment of peace in this fucking world. They can't even mourn the dead.
The thing Hassan is crying about here, as he says, is Israeli forces apparently attacking the funeral of a Palestinian journalist. Which, if that did happen, that sounds very sad. But of course, a lot of people began pointing out times when he's laughed at others crying. Like when he laughed at Kyle Rittenhouse crying on the stand during his trial.
There were 3 people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
He really looks like a pig. I mean, he's a pig.
And people are going to compare these situations and try to justify one instance of laughing at Kyle, but defend Hassan crying in the other case, and then shit on people who laugh at him crying. Ultimately, I don't have a big stake in this, but I do think Kyle's crying was genuine. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think he was faking it or anything like that. And Ethan also cried during this episode. That's another thing worth noting. They both broke down into tears over photos of suffering they had seen online of this war. It's pretty crazy to be living in an era where now, instead of like hearing from overseas, like, you know, in ye olden days, right? You know, 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s even, when people heard about wars, it was all through the TV, it was all from the news, and it was not graphic imagery. It was heavily censored, right? Now, I mean, on TikTok, a lot of stuff doesn't get taken down right away. We're seeing graphic images of war, bodies torn apart, gore, crazy missile explosions and stuff like that. It's crazy to be living in an era like this, right?
Zoomers are so screwed, dude.
But yeah, Ethan also cried during this episode.
I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead, like, 5-year-old daughter. I mean, and then there was another one that, like, as a father, it's even hard to talk about. This dude was holding his infant. It was like a year old. And he was like patting her on the back and saying like his final goodbye. I mean, he's holding her like she's alive, like he's just burping her or something. I didn't expect to get emotional about that, but like, I'm a new dad and that really f***s me up.
They're discussing a very, very heavy subject, and I don't want to accuse either of them of faking it. I'm sure some people will accuse Hassan of faking, but give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit. Let's say he's 100% expressing genuine emotion here. A lot of the audience was pretty moved by this discussion. They found it very productive, and they were glad to see people sort of express sympathy for those going through a really hard time in, you know, a war-torn country. What Ethan did not do in that episode was 1000% condemn Israel and say that everyone there is evil. And he also did not justify the death of Israeli civilians who perished in this conflict. Now, shortly after this, we got this video of Ethan saying he wanted to pause leftovers for the time being.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about this whole conflict anymore, really, at all, ever. And I'm frankly also thinking about putting something that I need to discuss with Hassan, but I do feel like I'm probably going to pause leftovers for the time being. I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's it. And it sounds like a lot of y'all don't want me to talk about it either.
But why is that? Well, it's because of the community. We already saw this in the prior post from Ethan where he talks about how people are demanding he be like farther left than he truly is. But on this podcast, Ethan goes on to talk about how apparently there's a portion of the audience that really fucking hates his takes and have been calling him like a genocidal Zionist maniac, basically, for basically just him expressing sympathy for people who are going through, you know, war.
I guess maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I am genocidal against Palestinians for caring about this stuff. I must be. Here's this. This is the post that's getting lots of likes. I'm going to be calm. I think a lot of these people are brigading from other communities too, probably. Including, by the way, Hassan's Discord, which is not associated with him. He's not in there. He has nothing to do with it. But the people in there, oh, it's at 550 upvotes. Okay, great. So 500, so there's lots of people coming here saying that I shouldn't be talking about this, and I'll read it. Hassan's Discord, and by the way, to the people who are in that Discord, I saw everything you guys said. It was recorded, sent to me during our whole episode on the Gaza-Israel conflict. What I saw in that Discord was near universal praise for Hamas, near universal saying people deserved it, near universal people saying dudes who was like, the hang gliders came in and showed him what's up. People saying he's spitting facts. Near universal. People near universally calling me a Zionist pig, mass murdering, genocidal freak. And if you want to know the truth, that f***ed me up seeing that Discord. Because it made me realize that a lot of these people are watching this show, and it frankly disturbed me. And I want to make it clear, Hassan doesn't support that stuff. I had a private conversation with him, and I told him, like, this stuff is really upsetting to see. And Hassan sat down with his mods, and he sat down with his team and said, this stuff's not acceptable. So again, it's important to emphasize he is not responsible for this. But I will say that seeing that, oh, and here, just again to just speak well of my friend, he posted this same post I did and says it's straight up anti-Semitic, which it obviously is. So the reason that I canceled the show on Friday, frankly, is because I read that Discord, and it was, I don't know what's the word, but frankly, it was, I don't know what's the word. I mean, I was horrified. I felt used in a sense that these people were watching this and like, they didn't actually care at all. They saw me as like a vessel to spread what they believe is true. They don't care about what I'm saying at all.
And Ethan does not want these people in his audience because they fucking hate him. Meanwhile, Hassan, in my opinion, is probably even more extreme politically than he lets on in front of Ethan, and that's why this large section of the audience is there, who hates Ethan for even being sympathetic at all to Israeli citizens who are dying. And then you have members of the audience on Twitter calling Ethan an IDF shill, which I have been watching these podcasts, okay? And I'm not the most informed person in the world, so maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I would definitely not say that anything Ethan has said comes across as being an IDF shill. I used to watch every H3 podcast episode. I stopped once the Israeli-Palestine conflict started because Ethan has been parroting IDF talking points for hours. His crew is clearly uncomfortable and wants Hassan to talk sense into him. Yeah, they want Hassan to talk some sense into him. Too bad he just canceled Leftovers. I get that this is a rough time for Ethan and his family, but he has a massive platform, and his commentary has been irresponsible. Go look at the H3 subreddit, it's disgusting. Also, I find what Ethan says after AB's statement gross. He criticizes the audience without seeing why his crew doesn't want to speak. It's not the audience they're afraid of, it's Ethan and how he'll respond. Ethan has always had problems, but this might be the worst in terms of him being blind to his own biases. As someone watching from the outside in, he seems defeated and beaten. This is worse than anything his haters have pegged him with in the past. This is a group of people who want to express no sympathy for Israel or its citizens, no matter what happens to them. Now, I personally have no stake, once again, but obviously if these people hate Israel and everything it stands for, and they include everyone living within those borders within that hatred, and Ethan is expressing some sympathy for those people, then there's going to be a bit of conflict there. I've even seen people tweeting out claiming that Ethan Klein's wife personally has like murdered Palestinians because she was a part of the IDF, which I think she was part of the IDF, but do you really see Ela Klein mowing down people? Do you really see that? Do you think that happened? I think Ethan's starting to realize that people will straight up lie about you, even if you're a leftist, even if you're nice. Other leftists will fucking lie about you and try to destroy you if you don't agree with their opinions 100%. It's the same purity testing that the far left has been doing online for years, and he's just finally being exposed to it.
People say I'm silencing you guys, so I don't know if anyone wants to say anything. All right.
I feel like it's a conversation that's better for someone like you and Hassan to have together. I don't know if I'm properly equipped to give my side in the correct way.
Can I advocate for you for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
The people who are saying AB needs to respond, AB needs to speak up, are you guys. I'm not going to say. I'll say it. You don't have to say anything. And I'm not speaking for AB. This is my opinion. Who the are you to demand him to talk about something?
I appreciate that.
Let him process it and feel what he wants without your expectations and coming down on him from all different angles.
Now, the first episode we looked at was titled Hassan is Leaving Leftovers, which at the time felt like a tongue-in-cheek title, but now it looks like this may be the case after all. Ethan, having to grapple with and face this large portion of his audience that is basically political extremists, has made him reevaluate things in a major way.
I wouldn't say it's done for good. All I said is that it's, I would like to take a pause from it. That's all. And a lot of people are disappointed by that. It'd been going for a while, and I felt like we were hitting a good groove. But on one hand, people are saying, Ethan, someone take Ethan's phone. And so here, this is me relinquishing my phone. I'm saying, I am taking a break with peace and love. My fear with the show is just basically that, for the time being, is that there's going to be a lot of more episodes that are going to make people really angry, and it's going to be really upsetting. Is there any beef with Hassan? Hassan, of course not. Me and Hassan talked about it. We're friends first and foremost above everything. He is compassionate. He understands. He's being supportive.
The H3 subreddit has people posting things like, I understand why he feels like this. He has been hated his whole life just for being a Jew. If I were a Jew, I'd be very scared myself. This is a crazy post, man. I have to assume this is just poorly worded, but damn, this is a bad post, man. Meanwhile, other posts on the subreddit are people saying they want the show to come back and they'd like to see it happen again. There are reasonable people in the audience willing to hear the debate. These controversial episodes actually performed very well, and there was an audience that saw it positively. But there's also this subsection of the audience, which mostly comes from Hassan's chat and people who like his stuff, who are psychotic and think Ethan Klein is pro-genocide. It's pretty insane the place that the H3 brand currently is. Meanwhile, Keemstar tweets out saying that he's shocked Ethan Klein is the only person with a reasonable take on this conflict.
Listen, everyone in my periphery, everyone in my circle, all the leftist people that I watch, that I'm part of, that watch this show, because I consider myself a part of that side, are all pretty much uncritically accepting of Hamas propaganda and uncaring about the rewriting of history right before our eyes about this stuff. So I'm not seeing a lot of people, even though you might look at the popular media and say, you know, everybody's supporting Israel. The popular media's defense of Israel is cartoonishly dumb and evil. You know, burn them all to the ground. They have a right to defend themselves. Bomb Gaza, like psycho shit, okay? But on the left, I don't see anyone saying what I'm saying right now. I just see the opposite. And so that's why I feel that I need to say it. If you're going to extrapolate from this that I don't care about Palestinians dying, then you're definitely reading way too far into this. And you're also, in my opinion, really callous.
On one side, you have posts on Reddit saying, you're valid in how you feel. No one should be entitled to hearing and forcing you to speak on something that brings you mental anguish. You've been through a lot these past couple of months. It's okay to take a break if you need it. The rash might be stress-induced, and we worry about your health. Wait, does he have like a rash? I didn't even hear about that. I thought there was like an eye worm. I didn't hear about the rash. You don't owe anyone anything. Your well-being is way more important than our entertainment. It is absolutely understandable and reasonable for you to take a step back from a topic that is harmful to you. We will be here when you're ready and feel like you can get back to the goofs and gaps more freely. Sincerely, Carissa, a longtime paying member. And then you have Twitter, where people with Hassan profile pictures proclaim that the Leftovers podcast is only good because of Hassan. Ethan is a stubborn, disrespectful, immature asshole who only cares about being progressive when it doesn't hurt his fifis. Hassan's support for progressive values and issues is unconditional. I respect him for that. I will say, this is fire, dude. I love everything. I love everything and everyone. I will say I do like this trend on the subreddit of people editing Ethan to look genuinely messed up or like some sort of fucking addict. It's pretty based. Now, it's hard to say what the future of the Leftovers podcast will be. On one hand, it's clear that Hassan and Ethan are friends and get along on a personal level. However, Ethan doesn't seem to be in favor of the more radical parts of Hassan's audience. An audience that has been there since the start, and when it comes to Piker, will always be there because of the opinions he espouses. They come to him because they like when he says crazy stuff like about 9/11 or about killing capitalists. They love that stuff, and ultimately, Hassan does not let that side of him show as much on Leftovers, but it will always be there. You cannot divorce that super radical ideology from him entirely. He loves it. He's a part of it. That's where he came from. And he also would never actively call out those parts of his audience because he seems to genuinely agree with them. Meanwhile, Ethan does not agree with them, and he is really feeling the burn from this. I remember there was this old episode of the H3 podcast from like 2019 or something like that where Ethan talked about there being a time when he would read every single comment on his YouTube videos. Keep in mind, those videos would get thousands and thousands of comments. Emotionally, I think he does not take crazy people being mad at him super well. And in general, I don't think he's equipped to read comment after comment and not have it affect his psyche quite a bit. And so this is just one more example of that. And I mean, listen, not to attack any intrinsic attributes or anything, but in these last few episodes, he does look kind of sickly and tired. He looks like he needs to drink a bottle of Pedialyte and lay down for a bit to get his stamina up. Ultimately, the show probably will come back. I don't think they are past the point of no return, but for now, the fan base is in shambles. There's some tension in the air, and the show is temporarily suspended.
The issue right now between Ethan and Hassan isn't actually a difference in political opinions. I think it's actually a little bit like Max and me, where Ethan is like Max and Hassan is like me, and that I think what Ethan is probably looking for is support from Hassan while his community is shredding him. Because if what Ethan is probably feeling right now is a little bit mindful, because from Ethan's perspective, okay, Ethan is a guy who tries his best to do right by everybody. He tries his best to be understanding of both sides. Ethan is getting insanely attacked on Twitter. His wife is being called a terrorist. He sees his community hardcore on Ethan and his wife, right? It's happening in the main subreddit. Now it's happening in that anti-fan subreddit, the H3H3 Productions one. He's seeing Hassan's Discord going hard at him. So Ethan is probably super mindful because he probably feels like he's trying to do his best to understand both sides, but his community and all the communities adjacent to him are just absolutely blowing him up.
What will happen in the future remains to be seen, but this arc where Ethan confronts the more radical parts of his audience has been entertaining to see, and hey, maybe it's showing some character growth. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. If you did not enjoy it, then leave a dislike, and drop a comment down below with your thoughts on all of this. Always good to hear what you guys have to say. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye. And if you liked this video, consider becoming a member. For $5 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts, unreleased videos, and the members-only Minecraft server. Thanks so much to all of my YouTube members who fund my content.